Welcome to the Power Hour. I'm your host, Eugene Shatsman. This is optometry's biggest and longest running show in its 13th season on the air. And today we're filming and recording from the Heart of America conference in Kansas City, Missouri. Now, we'll have another show to talk about the actual conference, and we'll publish that in a few weeks. But I was particularly impressed by one of the speakers here, a gentleman by the name of Lynn Lawrence. And I think he can help many of us with one challenge that I hear about all the time, and that is staffing. Lynn is a staff development expert, and to keep his clinical skills up, he actually still works in a clinical leadership position. But more importantly, he travels the country and he teaches groups on topics like staff management, staff training, and leadership development. And hearing him speak at the conference, I thought it would be super impactful to sit down with him and have an in-depth discussion on some of the issues I hear about from practice owners. So to start, in the episode, we get into turnover right away. Lynn gives us some secret formulas to keeping staff engaged, evaluated, and accountable. And then we make sure that we talk about ways to make sure that those staff are engaged and don't leave. And then we talk about leadership development plans, common issues, leadership training, leadership mindsets, and so forth. We hit hiring practices, what the first 90 days for an employee should look like, and so much more in this episode. If you are looking to resolve people-related challenges, I hope you find lots of nuggets of wisdom in this episode. And before we jump in, I just want to offer a quick reminder to send me some feedback. Tell me what you think about today's episode, or if you have any episode requests or content suggestions, questions. Basically, any way I can be a resource, please reach out to me directly. If you go to eugeneshatsman.com, you can drop me a note. Again, that's eugeneshatsman.com, or you can go on the Power Hour website. Always enjoy being a resource for you, and I hope you enjoy the show today. Hi, Lynn Lawrence. Welcome to the Power Hour. Excited to have you on the show.
I am excited to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah. So, you and I are both speaking at a conference at the Heart of America, and I really enjoyed some of your content as I was listening in earlier today. And I realized that as you travel across the country, today's environment, you're addressing one of the top challenges that practices have: the staff development, staff burnout, and staffing issues, period. So if you were to kind of sum up the biggest issue that people are experiencing, or really kind of break it down, what would you say when you're looking at today's environment?
Well, staff development is truly difficult because turnover is really high, and there's no real structure and programs in a lot of the offices. And so when we hire someone, a lot of times we just treat them like employees. We don't really treat them like long-term part of a professional staff. And so we teach them a job, but we don't answer a very important question: what's next?
I see.
And so staff development is something that I've taken as a personal project, because we need to answer the question of what's next. I hired you as a tech, but what's next? And so I wanted to take everybody that we bring on as a beginner to the next level. And so developing a staff development plan for your office is a long term. Matter of fact, my staff development plans on the short term are 18 months, and then on the long side is 2 years. And that way, it'll definitely reduce staff turnover. And so giving them a projected pathway, and it gives them expectations. And for me, I'm a big advocate for certification. So a part of that staff development plan is to end up with a certification.
Yeah. And so this is kind of interesting as you're thinking about it. The reality is that, you're going to get a lot of people say, well, I can't really answer what's next for a staff member, because chances are they're not going to be here in 6 months, because half the people I hire are gone within 6 months. And, I guess you would probably say, well, is it the chicken or the egg type of scenario?
Absolutely. So if when I hire for an 18-month program or a 2-year program, there's already an expectation
Right.
that I'm going to have them there for a long term. Whereas if I just hire an employee, chances are I may not keep them for 6 months. And so there's no expectation of longevity. if I just hire an employee.
Yeah, and what I've heard from practices is that techs are some of the hardest positions to hire for today. Is that what you're seeing too?
Oh, absolutely. And not only that, if you look at it, the techs are being taken to the next level in many cases. They're not only techs, they're becoming scribes. And it takes a while to get to that level. And so when you have someone that you've trained, and usually if you have a scribe, you've had them at least 12 months. So there's no one for one swap when you can't find another tech or another scribe. You just get another breathing body.
Right.
And so we start that process over.
Right. And so when you think about this tech 18-month program, you're saying I hire a person, and sometimes I talk to practices and they say, well, we just hired someone. They worked at, Burger King 2 weeks ago, and now they work here. And you're saying at the point of hiring, there should be an expectation. So how do you articulate that expectation to the former Burger King employee?
Well, the approach is if you take this job, you're going to enter a 18-month program. In that 18 months, we have landmarks that you need to accomplish throughout this program. So for your first 6 weeks, we expect you at the end of those 6 weeks to take a test on some of the basic skills that you've already learned, so we can find out where your strong areas are and where your weak areas are.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go into this process, if you accept this job, we expect you to be here for 18 months. And so during that 18 months, we're going to invest in you as a part of our team. And we want you to be at this level to be able to work fairly independent, because we've invested so much in you. And we don't want you to take the job if this is just a job for you, but we want to teach you and train you as a professional in the medical field. So whether you worked at Burger King or not, doesn't really matter. The goal is to make you a medical professional.
Yeah. So interestingly, at that point, you're talking about, okay, well, we're expecting to take you in at level 0, and we're expecting to get you to level 5 by 18 months, and there's milestones in the middle. What about the employee who says, well, when I get to level 5, you're going to pay me a lot more, right?
So actually in the 18-month process, there are opportunities to get pay raises. So normally, if you know nothing about the field, we're not going to start you out at a mid to upper level pay. We're usually going to start you out at a certain pay level. 90 days is a really telltale sign. Are they the material that we were looking for the position? And so we usually say 90 days is your non-attributional point. It gives you a chance to figure out if you're a good fit for us, and it gives us an opportunity to figure out if you're a good fit for the team. And so if you're not a good fit for the team, well, you're not going to make it to 91 days.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are some things that I like to teach, like if you are late 2 times in that 90-day period, the third time we consider keeping you or not, because that means you're on average going to be late for work at least once a month. And then we work in the medical field. I think that a patient appointment is like an invitation to a party. And we don't have staff to actually start their party. They don't think they're having a whole lot of fun at that party.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so we need to teach our staff accountability through the process. So that 18 months is not just about teaching them skills. It's teaching them about how to fit on a team and their team responsibilities. And everybody gets responsibilities. After the 6-month period, we teach them how to report on their own performance. It's not just, we're going to give them a performance report, but let's just say if you're a tech and we want you to self-audit pretty much your own record. So I forgot to put the VAs in this many times. I forgot to put the IOPs in this many times. If they can catch their own mistakes, the doctors don't. They will find that the doctors are a lot happier with them if they can catch their own mistakes. So it's not just teaching them a skill, it's teaching them how to be accountable to that skill.
The self-accountability is really interesting to me. So how do you set that up? I mean, is it just being super clear about the expectations, or being super clear about them recognizing their own mistakes? How do you do it?
So it depends on the work dynamics and the resources within the office. So let's say if there's a scribe in the office with the doctor. We just give them an audit sheet. So when you open up this chart, did you see ... These things were in the chart. If there's something missing, they only have to put a hash mark on that sheet.
So they look at, one chart out of the 25 that they touched in the previous day or something.
Absolutely. And we look for trends within that time period. So let's say if it's someone that's been there for 4 weeks, we expect a few more mistakes, but we shouldn't be leaving them. This is not an independent worker yet. And
Right.
so whoever is identified as the individual's trainer is really a critical part of that. And that's something that's missing in a lot of offices. Normally we do what we call just-in-time training. It's like, dude, I'm going to show you what I need you to do right now. And that's the end of it until I can find time to show you something later. Whereas in a staff development program, they can actually read at home, watch videos at home. They can prepare for what's coming because they know what's coming. And it's a lot better than just-in-time training.
So you would say that if I have someone starting my practice and they're, 2 weeks out of Burger King, and that person's job is going to be an 18-month program, as you said. So you say, well, let's assign a trainer, and then we're going to set up an audit process. Within how quickly am I going to self-audit my work?
You're not going to start auditing probably for 8 weeks. And so there's so much to learn. The learning curve is steep in the medical field. There's things like compliance that they have to learn. You can't wait 6 months to teach compliance. They would derail a lot of programs in the process,
Right.
waiting 6 months to teach them that. That's one of the reasons why a trainer is so important as well, because they can help them remember. If you come from Burger King to the medical field, it's a whole new world. And so to teach a tech how to basically crawl, then teach them how to walk, then teach them how to run, then teach them how to teach others to do the same. That's a process. And so it's so important to be able to teach them what that map looks like. And so when they can see what the map looks like, they said, I'm preparing to crawl. I'm preparing to walk. I'm preparing to run. And if they're really dedicated, they're going to prepare before they get there.
Yeah, that's good. Now, a lot of your methodology is based on, I think, your background in the military, right? So talk a little bit about that, because that's one of the best training programs in the world, and it needs to be, because lots of people's literal lives are at stake.
Absolutely. So I truly enjoy the fact that I spent 30 years in the United States Air Force, and 20 of those 30 years I was actually a medic. But when I was trained as a medic, you don't get to touch a patient until you pass the classroom didactics. And so to get to a point, it's like almost a reward. It's like, I'm going to get through the classroom part. I'm going to get through the classroom part. And I get to actually deal with a real patient. Right. And so when I transitioned from, the military into the civilian sector, and I found out that there was no real structure in the training, I was like, it was a gas. It's like, how can you be a good tech if you don't have good training?
Right.
And so my goal was to actually start developing training, just like I had in the military, to work in the civilian sector. It was a little bit of a challenge because there's a big difference between if you just have 4 employees or if you have 25 employees. Those two cultures are totally different. Because if you only have 4 employees, one calls out, 25% of your staff's not there today. So, and so you have to develop programs that are tailored and that will fit in the actual the size of the organization that you're working with.
Yeah. So what have you found to be some of the most effective ways to, as you're thinking about a practice that has we'll call it, they have standard operating procedures, but like you said, they're doing your version of just-in-time training, and they're trying to get a warm body to fill a spot. I feel like a lot of practices it's stuck in that, it's kind of the perpetual hamster wheel of I got a new person. I got to train that person. That person's not going to show up to work in 2 weeks. I got to get another new person to backfill them if they don't show up. So I feel like there's a lot of issues around staffing that have to do with both reliability, but then also like I don't have time to assign a trainer to every single one of these newbies, and I don't have the resources to be able to kind of to take them through a robust program. I need them to be productive now.
So that's very important and impressive because every office is different. And you said something that was really critical. They're stuck in a certain ritual or routine and they don't know how to get out of it. So I can tell you, when you develop your processes correctly and you put checklists in those processes, what you reduce the friction in the training process because the staff has a checklist to go by. And so you already have a manual, so to say, to begin with. I go into offices and there's nothing. No, there's no manual, there's no checklist. And so a lot of times we do just in time training where we go, here, I'm going to show you how to do this and I want you to do it. Well, they don't know why they're doing it. They don't know anything other than what you just spent a few minutes showing them, and they're going to do the best they can. But if the why never comes, you have robots, you don't have techs.
Yeah, and if they don't understand the bigger picture, then they're not able to contribute to the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
Right. Now, you talked a little bit about leadership development with me yesterday, and I know you have a pretty strong opinion on this. What's your take on how leaders should be developed inside of a medical practice?
So, in the medical field, it's actually a very interesting dynamic. So I work with surgeons and clinical doctors, and it's really interesting, the hierarchy in the medical field. And so the surgeon is next to God. And so we have to make sure that they are taken care of. But when they're put in charge, it doesn't mean that they're a great leader. It means they're a great surgeon. And so leadership is something that you have to train. In the military, if you refuse leadership training, that is your exit key. You don't get to stay in. And it doesn't matter if you're enlisted or a commissioned officer. Once you refuse leadership training, you have told the military that your future in the military is pretty much over. And so when I transitioned, I looked for leadership training in our industry. It wasn't there. And so it's like, well, I mean, how do you become a great office manager? How do you become a great lead tech? How do you run a contact lens program if you haven't been trained on how to lead? And so we find that there's not, and when you have really good leadership, your consistency level goes up. You reduce your problems and the friction in the office because you know how to handle certain situations. But without training, it's like feeling around in the dark, and eventually it's going to hurt because you're going to touch something or do something you have no business doing. And so I've met some amazing leaders, amazing people in the field. I've met doctors that have unlocked the key to leadership. I've met office managers that have done the same. But the ones that are dealing with a lot of drama and chaos, they really struggle a lot. And a lot of it comes down to leadership training.
So what are the components of leadership training that you think people should really be aware of?
Oh, very good. So I'm a big John Maxwell fan. And so he has a book called The 5 Levels of Leadership, and it identifies all the different levels of leadership. And the first level, people are familiar with the first level. I have a title and I have power to make your job go away. So you need to listen to me. That might work for a brand new employee. It might work. Fear and threatening works. It's just a temporary fix. But if you want long-term employees, you have to have a plan for long-term employees. And that's where the leadership comes in. The leadership is responsible for the culture. So I'm a consultant. And so when you walk into an office, they don't call consultants in unless there's a problem that needs to be fixed.
Right.
And so when I walk into a problem, the first thing I do is assess the leadership. Tell me where you're going. Tell me your plan to get there. Tell me what programs you have in place to actually make this happen. And that's where I begin. because it doesn't matter. You don't want to work from the bottom up. You want to work from the top down.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes all the difference in the world because the whoever's in charge is steering the ship.
Yeah. So you were talking about the 5 levels just so that the audience gets a sense. Talk through the rest of them so that they can kind of get a picture of it. I imagine if you're listening, you might be thinking, well, what level of leadership am I, whether I'm the office manager or the owner of the practice? And what are the things that distinguish those different levels?
Well, that's very good. So the first level is pretty much I have a title. And I don't really know what to do with it, but I'm in charge. And so I'm going to bark orders at people. I'm more focused on tasks than I am people. But the level 2 is where you actually start learning that relationships are very important. And so you start treating your staff totally different because you want them to be a part of the team. You want them to feel like they fit in. You want them to learn. And so relationships become more important.
Mm-hmm.
You still need to get work done. And that's level 3. It's where you can focus on making sure that the work is actually getting done. So level 1, you just pretty much have a position and you have people under you. Level 2, you making those people feel at home and you're getting them to want to do the job and want to belong. Level 3, the job is very important. You already have the people following you.
Mm-hmm.
I have this rule. If you look at your team and you turn around and you don't face them and you say, everybody that wants to follow me, line up behind me. If you turn around and there's nobody standing up, you've been fooling yourself. You're not a leader.
Mm-hmm.
Because people truly want to be led. People want to know what direction we're going in. So level 1 is just you being there. You got a job, you got a title. Level 2, you know that the people are important. Level 3, we want to accomplish the mission. That level 3 is really, really where the rubber meets the road. If we have goals, this individual understands the value of the goals and the people, and then he's teaching or she's teaching the people the value of the goals. Level 4 is when we get into mentoring. And we start making sure that we're making leaders and not employees.
Mm-hmm.
It's great to have followers, but followers will always be followers until you teach them
To be leaders.
To be leaders. And every office needs to start training leaders. The worst thing that we do is wait for somebody to retire or get sick or check out. And now all of a sudden we have to throw someone else in the fire.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't be that way. If we have an office manager, when that office manager is out, we should already have someone trained to fill in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, anyone can get sick. I mean, COVID takes people down for weeks at a time. But the business of optometry still goes on.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you only have 1D positions in the office, you have a very volatile office.
Yeah. And I think what happens sometimes is that exactly what you just described, and a person quits or checks out or gets sick or something like that. And then we need someone. So we just take our best person who is good at the technical job and say, well, they're good at the technical job, so they can be a manager. So now our best optician is the manager of the optical or the new office manager, depending on the size of the practice. And at that point, we might be in a place where, they have no leadership skills, but they have good technical skills. And so what do you do with that type of person?
So you have to train them. And this is one of the big issues. I can be the best tech in the world and I could love my job. And then you elevate me to a leadership position. And now I don't love it anymore because I'm not prepared for that. I feel so much stress because no one's taught me. They gave me a position with no training. And now all of a sudden I come to work every day. I don't know what to expect. I don't know what to do. And it starts to stress me out. And honestly, you can take a really good tech and ruin them by doing such a thing. And so, but when you train them and you teach them the role, and that's why it's so important to do it. When you have the resources, if you have a good office manager, you tell them, train someone that can do your job when you're not here. It shouldn't be a threat. Mm-hmm. Delegation is a key part of actually being a really good leader. And at level 4, and John Maxwell, if you don't know how to delegate, you're not going to get a good score on level 4. Mm-hmm. Because that's the goal, is to teach someone to do that job up at that level. Level 5 is actually where you are no longer working the floor. You're just reaching down, picking up leaders, pulling them up. And so level 5 leaders they use their influence to actually make sure that the level 4 leader is being elevated up to level 5. And so there's a lot that happens at the level 5 leader, but they're not necessarily on the floor. They're actually making sure that level 4 leaders are being trained well and they're being prepared for level 5.
Got it. So, if somebody had to start the process of implementing a leadership training process with some of their staff, right, or at least assessing whether my staff is leadership ready in some capacity, where would they start?
So you need to start teaching them the characteristics of leadership.
Okay.
What does a leader look like? What does a leader do? I've had a couple of practices where they had some really, really smart, fast learning, very, very young office managers, and they could do the job. But the area that they lacked in most is emotional intelligence. They would blow up. So in the military, we had this term, you lead by example.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm going to be walking around the office yelling and screaming and throwing a fit, my children would walk around the office and do the same thing. The ones that I've been mentoring and grooming, because that's the type of culture that I've allowed or I've endorsed.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want a professional staff, you should be professional at all times. I tell office managers, I said, you're a human. You may feel like you want to go and you want to scream, but you never do that in front of your employees. If you need to scream, you go out to your car and you turn on the engine, you turn up the music and you let loose. But do not do it on the floor. Do not do it in front of your folks, because now you're creating a culture that you're going to have a hard time dealing with down the road. You lead by example. If you want certain behaviors, you need to perform the behavior and watch your staff emulate that behavior. And I struggle with doctors that, I own the place. I can do what I want. Yeah, you can. But is it good for your practice to do what you want?
And you make a really good point. You'll get back exactly what you put in. So if you make a behavior good, or if you make a behavior acceptable at the top, then that's the behavior you're going to see at all levels of the organization.
Absolutely. Then the more consistent you are. My wife and I, we worked in the children's ministry at church for over 30 years. And parents ask us all the time, why is it that my children listen to you, but they don't listen to me? I said, well, I'm consistent. If I say no, they know I mean no. We don't sit around and negotiate. I have a joke that I don't negotiate with terrorists when I'm dealing with the children. But the practice is the same way. We are big children. The more consistent we are, the more the people understand the boundaries of what happens within a culture. And the more consistent the leadership is, the more consistent those that follow them will be.
So you were talking about a tech starting a couple weeks out from a different job, and that tech is going through their 18-month program. At what point do you start introducing in that 18-month program? Do you start introducing the characteristics of leadership?
So if they have absolutely no training in the field, I'm not going to start any leadership training probably for 6 to 8 months. And I give a window like that because some people are fast learners and some people are not. And so, in our practice, we had, for example, we hired 5 new millennials at the same time. Not recommended, but, but 2 of them were absolutely exceptional. They learned the tech skills so fast that we actually allowed them to become scribes. Normally a scribe takes us about 12 months, but they were scribing by the 7th month period, because one had a background in medical coding and the other one had a background in computers, and they partnered. And man, that partnership blossomed into knowledge and wisdom. And we never hold back people that want to learn. We always want to set them on the right path. So we give them checklists to follow. We make sure we monitor what they're doing so that we don't get a train wreck at the end of this. And then we allow them to move at a pace that's commensurate to their ability to understand and learn.
Mm-hmm.
And so at leadership, if we wanted to give them a leadership position at 10 months, they would be ready. But we just have to make sure they're ready. Everybody's not ready for leadership at 10 months.
Do you think that every person in the organization should, because you mentioned the military, you know, your pathway out is saying no to leadership training. Do you think that every person in the practice should be exposed to some level of leadership training?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I get a great tech. And so we're going to get them to a point where they're doing their routine daily duties in a way that we have found to be totally acceptable. And then we're going to move them into another area. Let's say maybe we're going to give them a responsibility for our contact lenses. And that's a program. That is not an extra duty. That's a program. So we might move them to be head of our contact lens program. And we're going to give them the parameters and the checklist to follow. We're going to ask them to report on that program. If that program is your responsibility and the team is counting on you, you will report on that contact lens program.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll teach them how to do that. And so that's their first introduction to maybe being an independent leader, is giving them a small program and see how they actually function with a small program. And then we'll give them a little bit more responsibility. And once we do that, let's say I'm working on a certification called an ocular hygienist. So dry eye disease is really a big program within the practice. And so let's say they have done well with the contact lenses and they have a desire to want to become an ocular hygienist. So we want to teach them all the areas of the dry eye program. And when they're ready, they may get an opportunity to run that dry eye program. But that's going to take that may actually be another 6 to 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but we want to give them an opportunity. If they see an area that they really like and they want to thrive in, we want to encourage that.
So you're saying every employee in the practice should have an opportunity to do something and should get some sort of leadership training, even if it's an understanding of how a leader behaves.
Absolutely.
Now, the skeptic in me, or the skeptical practice owner listening, is going to be saying, okay, Lynn, that sounds great, except every time I say, oh, hey, it's time for a leadership opportunity, or I'd like to get you some leadership training, or I'd like for you to start thinking about future leadership opportunities, then immediately that employee is coming back to me and saying, well, when am I getting my raise?
So we explain raises this way. If we give you a new position, we want to see you perform in that position before we have a discussion over a raise. So let's say I give you the contact lens program. If I give you the contact lens program and I give you a raise and you don't do well, I want my money back. I gave you the raise for the contact lens program. Or would you prefer that we give you 90-day trial of the contact lens program leadership? And after you do well in that area, now I'll give you the raise.
And then you define what well means.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you give everybody metrics? Do you give everybody, what are the kinds of things that you measure to figure out whether somebody's progressing towards a leadership role?
Depends on the program, but yet every program has to report to the team. So we decide what the metrics will be for every area. So the contact lens program will have metrics. Let's say, how many of our patients are ordering 1-year supply? Let's say if I have 3 doctors, are they all doing the same, or maybe one of my doctors are lagging way behind the other 2? And so we'll talk to the doctor and say, hey, doc, talk to me. Tell me how you're actually explaining that 1-year contact lens program purchase to your patients.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to beat the doctors down. We don't want to beat the staff down. We want to build them up. And so metrics actually help us to see where we're performing well and where we need improvement. And so we don't use it as a tool as a correction tool for performance. We use it as a correction tool for potential.
Mm.
And so this is what our team can do. We've done this in the past. All of a sudden, we're actually taking a dip. Since you're my subject matter expert, now, Eric, can you explain to me what's going on?
Mm-hmm. So what's interesting is you're saying give somebody the leadership talk at some point relatively early in their employment, but basically everybody should have
Absolutely.
an opportunity at some sort of leadership based off of how they react to that. You then help get them some additional responsibility, but don't pay them for that responsibility until they succeed. And they succeed based off of criteria that you set at the time that you're giving them that responsibility.
Absolutely. So the pathway for staff development should be clear for everyone. And everyone wants to be paid more money. I mean, as a consultant, I walk into the office, I get out the whole team there, docs, everybody. And I ask this as my first question: who would like a pay raise? And I love to watch all the docs raise their hand. Mm-hmm. It's like, I own this place. I would like a pay raise, Lynn. And so we have to talk about that. I like to talk about that early. It's like, we don't have a little guy in the back. He's green and he's putting in white paper and he's turning this little handle and cranking out dollar bills. It doesn't work that way. So my second question is, where does a pay raise come from? I want the whole team to hear this. I want the whole team to understand that there's no magical formula. Just because you woke up this morning, you thought, hey, it's a great idea. I think I need a pay raise. Everything's more expensive. That's true. Everything's more expensive for the practice as well. So when you teach the staff the business of the practice, they understand that there's no magical pay raise. If we're not making more money, where do we get the money to pay you more? Mm-hmm. And that's why it's so important to teach every area their responsibility and their responsibility to the area and to the team. It's all interconnected. And I love bonus programs. I prefer bonus programs over pay raises.
Okay.
So when we're thriving in our revenue, we can share the wealth. But when we're not thriving, our overhead is not way up here because we gave everybody this mega pay raise. And now we're not making the money that we were making 6 months ago. And now we're struggling with making ends meet. So I'm more of an advocate to teach them about profitability. And when we are really profitable, we share the wealth. When we're not being profitable, we just need to work hard.
So do you suggest that practice owners kind of open up the books to employees in some way, or at least share the key metrics of profitability with employees?
I like key metrics. Some employees are not ready for the whole picture, the big picture yet, but how well is your area performing? Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting. It's like, we're underperforming, but I want a pay raise. It's like, does that make sense to you? That's what I asked him. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense to you? I mean, if this was your practice, I love this question. If it was your practice and you had an employee that was working in an area that was underperforming, would you give them a pay raise? And they go, no. What are you doing here?
Right.
It's like, dude, we need to pick up your area. We would love to give you a pay raise. We would love to share the profits of the practice. But if you don't understand the profits of the practice, you come with questions that we disappoint you with our response because you don't understand the big picture.
All right. I thought the 90 days that you mentioned is so critical. So when we come back from the break, I'd like to zoom in to how you recruit and then how you tell within the first 90 days whether an employee is going to fit or not. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Allie at the Power Practice. Every month when we talk to clients, staffing comes up as one of the biggest challenges. Finding the right people, avoiding costly hiring mistakes, and trying to build a team that actually sticks around. It can feel like an uphill battle, right? What if you could finally take the guesswork out of hiring? That's why we're so excited to bring you Hire Smart by Wonderlic and the Power Practice, a hiring solution designed specifically for eye care practices. Here's the game changer. Hire Smart doesn't just measure cognitive ability, problem-solving skills, and learning speed. It also gives you exclusive insights into a candidate's work style, adaptability, and even how they'll fit into your practice culture. Imagine making a confident, informed decision before you even make the hire. And the best part, we've made it affordable and easy to use so you can start building your dream team right away. If staffing has been stressing you out, it's time to turn things around. Visit thepowerpractice.com and click on Hire Smart to get started. Let's help you hire smarter and stress less.
Hi, we're back in the Power Hour with Lynn Lawrence. So we're talking about one of the biggest problems that practices cited in 2023 and 2024, and certainly going early in 2025, is staff management, staff issues, staff burnout, staff problems with the team. And Lynn's doing a great job of kind of diagnosing piece by piece where we've got to look or which rocks we've got to flip over and see what's underneath. Well, one of the things that I wanted to talk about was hiring, right? And you talked about this 90-day, this 90-day trial period that you share with every employee in the first, as you're bringing them on board. So tell me more about that and how that process works. And again, sometimes practices just try to bring in a warm body and teach, but sometimes practices also bring in somebody with experience, medical experience, but maybe they weren't optometry experienced. Maybe they were, whatever. Maybe they worked in a physician's office or a primary care office, and or something else. So they may be familiar with, I don't know, HIPAA, but they may not be familiar with how a slit lamp works or what some of our testing looks like, things like that. So let's jump in first into what you look for in an employee when you're trying to make sure that the practice hires right.
So let's go to the ad.
Okay.
I need a new employee. So right. I heard Dr. Selena McGee yesterday said something that was absolutely amazing. She said, I intentionally make my ads for my new employees difficult.
Okay.
And then she says, I have to do a psych eval or personality testing. Mm-hmm. And her personality test lasts an hour. She said, it weeds out a lot of people that are not serious about the job. Mm. If I'm going to invest an hour of my time for this position, I really want that position. Mm-hmm. And so I found that to be very creative on her behalf. But a lot of times we run an ad and we just put enough information in there to grab any type of employee. And one of the points that you made is what background do they have? Well, it's a lot easier to transition someone who's worked in the medical field already mm-hmm. than someone who's never worked in a medical field. And so if they've worked in the medical field already, you're not starting at zero. Mm-hmm. If they worked at Burger King and they've never worked in the medical field, we start at zero. Now, they may have good customer service skills. Now, that's one of the hardest things to teach is mm-hmm. how to be nice to people. If you don't know how to be nice to people, medical field's not for you.
Yep.
Because mean people walk in the front door, but I have this rule. I own them. This is my world. My little magic wand that I have, that rings in my head when a patient walks in the front door. I want them to have the most magical experience while they're here. I want to be able to define why they come to our practice and not go to our competitors. And that's something that's very difficult to teach. So if you have someone with really good customer service skills, you have a good start.
Yeah. So you're saying maybe hire for the customer service skills because those are really difficult things to teach. You can't really take someone who hates people and make them like people, or even if you could train them to like people, naturally they're going to be expending so much more energy to do that. So, people who self-select into areas of hospitality or even, service-based positions tend to do well. And I'll share a quick story is that we have somebody on our team in our organization who was a burnt out barista at Starbucks, and it was a very busy Starbucks. It was in the medical area, so she dealt with a lot of doctors as a result of this. And she, when she transitioned to our team, she already had the skills, the people skills. She also already had the multitasking skills, the lots of moving pieces and parts. And I got to remember this, and I got to do that, and this is in this order, whatever. So we tried several positions to make a fit, and she's turned out to be a phenomenal project manager. And a project manager needs to have a lot of people skills to interact with the people that they're facilitating work from day to day, but they also need to make sure things get done and they get done efficiently and nobody's waiting for stuff for too long and things. And so that person turned out to have phenomenal skills that kind of predisposed them. And yet, we just gave them the job training and the industry training for that project management position. I don't think she would have known when she was working at Starbucks that she was developing the necessary skills for a project manager. So, you make a really good point that people with really strong customer service might be good pickups for an eye care practice. So what fields or what other fields do you think might be really good in terms of predisposing someone for something that we need in our practices?
So I've heard several doctors say this. I hired a waitress at a local restaurant,
right?
Because the way they took care of me when I was at the restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
So someone that's already in the customer service industry that you've experienced or someone else has experienced those are good potential hires.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't do pressure well, so let's talk about the different areas in the office. The front desk, normally not the best paid in the office, but boy, I tell you, they take bullets. They have to have Kevlar skin
Mm-hmm.
up at the front desk, and they can't be people that are so fragile emotionally because they'll go home and they're not going to last 6 months at the front desk.
Mm-hmm.
So you need people that are emotionally tough at the front desk and can stay focused and can diffuse a situation, not pour gasoline.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but a tech may not necessarily need those same skills at the front desk because they're dealing more with one-on-one. At the front desk, your phone's ringing, you got check-in, you got check-out. There's so many. Multitasking is a superior skill set to have for your front desk worker. Whereas a tech may actually be able to focus more one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
Optician is more of a one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
But the front desk, they're pulling and they're shucking and jiving up at the front desk, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot going on. So not everybody can handle that. And so a good training program, and you were talking about the 90 days. You have to monitor closely the first 90 days. And they may be strong, super strong in one area, but if they, let's say, have focusing issues, it doesn't matter where you work in our office. If you can't stay focused, you're not going to do well. If you can't complete a task, you're not going to do well.
Mm-hmm.
And so you may have great customer service skills, great people skills, but if the other skills aren't being developed, 90 days is going to be a long 90 days. And I'm okay with extending the 90 days. Let's say we have someone that's maybe not a fast learner. Let's give them an additional 30 days. I may extend the 90 days to 120 if I feel that they're actually going in the right direction, just a little bit slower than I would like for them to.
Mm-hmm.
But that 90 days, that is critical. There's landmarks that they have to meet at the 90 day.
So what are some examples of landmarks for for a tech, for example?
A tech, let's say within the first 2 weeks, if they can't take visual acuity, they're not going to make it 4 weeks. Because that's really easy. You teach them how to do visual acuities. You teach them the importance of visual acuity. And when I say 2 weeks, that's 2 weeks past compliance training. It's like we throw so much at people. The learning curve is so steep in our profession. It doesn't matter what position you put them in. So the front desk, you have to really have people that can remain focused. And so Suzanne with an out an E, and we can do everything in that visit correctly. We can do all the diagnostic testing and everything else. But if she was put in the computer wrong,
mm-hmm.
we don't get paid for seeing Suzanne.
And Suzanne's experience when she sees her name misspelled on the paperwork,
mm-hmm.
She might not even say anything, but she's pissed off. She might not even come back.
They don't even care enough about me to spell my name right. That's the question. So the people working the front desk have to be accurate to the point and understand why accuracy is so important. And we actually monitor that in metrics too. And a lot of people don't realize it comes from the billing department, reasons for rejection. If all of our reasons for rejection is that we can't input the patient information correctly.
Yeah, right.
That's a problem.
That's
that problem is at the front desk.
Mm-hmm.
And
so details front desk.
Details. Actually, every area in our office requires details.
But so attention. So this is a good point because, my business, for example, curiosity is the skill that every position is required, that every position requires. So, and, whether it's marketing or practice consulting or practice growth training, anything we're doing with technology, curiosity is the core skill that if you don't have that, we're not going to be able to, it's just not going to work out. Attention to detail in a practice sounds like it's the core skill from your perspective.
Absolutely. From check in to check out, attention to detail. So at the front desk, if you can't get the patient put in the computer correctly, you're not getting paid for anything behind that.
Mm-hmm.
As a technician, your doctor is so dependent upon you for handing them information that is accurate and correct. And so if you don't know how to perform a test and you're just winging it, you could be setting your doctor up for failure. The doctor misses a diagnosis because you didn't put the information in the computer correctly. Or patients. Every patient is different. And some patients would prefer talking to a doctor versus a technician. So the technicians have to be really good at winning them over. So that because chair time is important. So if the longer the patient is in the doctor's chair, the less money the doctor's going to be able to make. And so hiring good staff, a good tech is going to be able to get through the screening process in a manner that is actually healthy for the whole process. And attention to detail, doing it right the first time. Accuracy is critical in every area of the office. Opticians. We have a remake metric, and that eats into the profit because we only get paid to actually do that once. So we have to do it twice or three times because we're sloppy in our work. It starts to eat the profits.
Yeah. And I would add a revenue per patient metric for the optician because, quite frankly, if they don't have good sales skills, and I say that with a massive leaning towards a positive leaning towards the word sales, not a sleazy leaning towards the word sales. If they don't have good sales skills, we're missing opportunity there as well. But I think, to your point, attention to detail, right? That's the core thing. So how do you interview for attention to detail, or how do you know up front whether attention to detail is something that they have?
So we always start out with tasks that are fitting. So the interview process is everybody brings their best. They dress the best. They act the best during an interview. But you don't really know a staff member until they've been put up under a load at test. And so, giving a task that is difficult or giving a patient that is difficult, you monitor how they handle it. And so I heard a guy one time speak. He said, they're like people like tea bags. You don't really know what flavor they are until you dip them in hot water. And so when the pressure is on, it's when you want to watch your teammate. You don't want anybody to go 90 days without any pressure. That is a big mistake because how do they respond to pressure? Now, let's say an optician that had 90 days, never responded to pressure. Now they have somebody come in yelling at them. They throw their glasses on the table and they pick them up and they throw them back. Well, that should have been discovered in the first 90 days. And so we really have to teach professionalism. And so when I joined the military in 1979, my parents taught me what respect was. Today in the military and basic training, they have a course on respect. And so our culture has shifted a bit. So what that has taught me is this: if you want a certain behavior in the office, you need to talk about it. And staff meetings are, if they're facilitated correctly, are one of the best learning times in the office. When you have to shut down for a staff meeting, it's costing your practice a lot of money. So a staff meeting is so critical and is so important. Everyone on the team needs to know how important a staff meeting is.
So, okay, tell me some of the things that make that meeting effective versus ineffective.
Okay, so it's team communication, number one. It's a display for leadership in every area. because I don't believe that the owner should have to stand up in front of everybody and give a State of the Union address.
Mm-hmm.
If you work the front desk, nobody knows more about what's going on at the front desk than you. You are reporting on the front desk.
I see. So that's the point of self-accountability that you were talking about before.
Absolutely. Yeah. Same thing with the techs. Let's say if our primary practice is glaucoma, and we monitor the number of OCTs and visual field tests that we're doing. Let's say last year we did 70 OCTs and 68 visual fields. But this year we only did 30 OCTs and 25 visual field. Someone that's working in the tech world should be able to answer that question on the spot. Well, we had 2 doctors out. One was sick and the other was scheduled vacation. That explains why our numbers are down.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know why my numbers are down. I mean, that your workload has been cut in half. Do we have too many techs is the next question.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what happened here?
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe the machine broke.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we weren't able to perform the test. But at that meeting, someone is explaining to the team why our numbers are down.
Mm-hmm.
And you're the one that's doing it all the time. You're the one that's doing it every day. There's no one better in the practice to actually explain
Got
why.
it. That's great. So what else happens in a good meeting versus a bad meeting?
So a good meeting, the leadership stands up. I love to start a meeting off with something positive. I like to go through our patient comments and pick out one. It's like, I have a NeuroLens patient that put on their glasses for the first time. They sat there and they began to weep because their eyes felt so good putting it on. Or a dry eye patient that has been struggling. We had a dry eye patient. She was, for 6 years, her eyelids would stick to her eyeball in the morning when she woke up.
Mm-hmm.
We performed treatments on her, and then she called the office back 3 days after her treatment, and she was crying because she said, "This is the first morning in 6 years that I woke up. My eyelids weren't stuck to my eyeball." Those are the type of things you want to start your meeting off with.
Mm-hmm.
A brag. And so it sets the tone that, guys, we're not here to beat you down. We're here to build you up.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go into all of the key performance indicators.
Mm-hmm.
And we go into them by area. And I like to rotate the areas so nobody feels like I'm always having to go first. So we rotate it around, but every area has to report on their key performance indicators.
Good. And then after that,
let's say this, everybody doesn't have any unlimited time. Everybody's on the time. So let's say if we have a 1 hour meeting and we go by section, we give everybody an allotted amount of time. So whatever you're going to present to the team, you have to do it in this amount of time. And let's say this, if there's an area that's broke, the meeting isn't the place to actually fix a problem. If it's a safety issue or a patient care issue that needs to be addressed, we'll go ahead and address it at the meeting. But if we knew the problem existed 2 weeks ago, why did we wait for the staff meeting to actually have the discussion?
mm-hmm.
Now, if it's something that's really important, we can say, we discovered it 2 weeks ago, and this is what we've done to fix the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't wait to the staff meeting to begin to fix the problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you teach ownership in every area. It's like, it's okay to tell us. Let's say our contact lens program, our supplier can't get the lenses in. We need to find another supplier. And this is what we're doing to find another supplier. That's important to the entire team, because the front desk needs to know when they get all those calls in, why is everybody calling about their contacts? Well, we have a supply issue right now. That's an easy thing for them to answer at the front desk. They don't have to go find the contact lens tech to answer that. Everybody on the team just learned the same information. Mm-hmm. So when we're having a staff meeting, we're talking about things that impact the entire team. And each section will actually present what's going on in their area. And it's real time, because those are our subject matter experts on the team.
And it makes perfect sense, because those are the people that you've elevated through some leadership opportunities. Mm-hmm. And those are the people who now feel more ownership in the practice, which goes back to our first point, which is how do we get people to stick around and retain, and we invest all this knowledge and all these resources in them, and then they leave. Well, they won't leave if they feel like they have ownership. Mm-hmm. And if they feel like they're working towards something. Back to your very, very first point, was understand where they're going and give them the next steps, the roadmap of where they're headed.
You said that very well.
Well, so thank you so much for being here, Lynn. I think this is just kind of the start of this of a massive deep dive into your wealth of knowledge. So thanks for being a resource for our listeners. I think this has been absolutely wonderful, and hopefully we have some future conversations on this really important topic that's troubling so many practices today.
Absolutely. And I thank you for the opportunity to be here with you as well. And I'm available whenever you need me.
All right. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's Power Hour episode. The Power Hour is actually owned by the Power Practice. Power Practice is a premier consulting group who helps practices achieve freedom of time, confidently solve practice issues, and grow their practices. They do this by having coaches and OD consultants, people who have actually done it, been there, and they're ready to help. If you want to learn more, go to powerpractice.com. There's a bunch of free tools there. You can also get a whole bunch of information and decide whether it's right for your practice. Again, if you're looking for more time, you're looking to solve complex practice issues or grow, the Power Practice might be right for you. Go to powerpractice.com to find out more.